everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our bizarre and unusual world. So today I'm going to be covering a very highly requested topic. So thank you to everyone that has requested this topic before, and to those of you that voted on social media to see this specific episode today. So today I'm going to be covering Ed and Lorraine Warren. As usual for this series, I'm going to be covering the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the Warrens. So some of you may be familiar with the names Ed and Lorraine Warren, or the Warrens, but if not, let's cover the who. So let's dive into Ed and Lorraine Warren and who exactly they are. So Edward Warren Minnie was born September 7th, 1926 in Connecticut, and he died August 23rd, 2006. Lorraine Rita Warren was born on January 31st, 1927 in Connecticut and is still alive today.
I'm Lorraine Warren, and this is my home. We've lived here, I guess about 40 years now. This is where everything started. Everything started about our work.
So Ed and Lorraine Warren married in 1952, and that same year they started the New England Society for Psychic Research, which is kind of known as one of the oldest ghost investigating groups or paranormal groups in the New England area. This couple or pair has taken part in several different paranormal investigations, supernatural occurrences, and so on. Together they have written many different books about their experiences, and they have stated that they have investigated over 10,000 cases. So Ed was known and noted as a self-taught and self-professed demonologist, an author, and a lecturer as well. Lorraine, on the other hand, claims to be a clairvoyant, also claims to have different connections to the paranormal or spirit world. You could say that she has like medium characteristics. This couple has helped train many different generations in the ghost hunting or paranormal world, and even today Lorraine Warren is still working and investigating different cases even at age 91.
It's been quite a career, and I'm still involved. I'm still involved with hauntings.
This couple was also very religious, so you could say that in their investigations or their paranormal experiences, the Catholic Church played a huge part in all of those different situations for them.
You simply make the sign of the cross in the direction that you're looking at it, and you would say, in the name of God, is there something that I can help you with? You shouldn't really hold a lot of communication with spirits. But in some cases, you're dealing with earthbound spirits, people who are very confused when they died. They don't understand why they're not in that physical body anymore. And they're drawn to the aura of a very sensitive person. And during the sleeping state, as you wake up, you are in a good situation where a spirit can reach you. Because you're on that same astral level.
Now, as for the where, this psychic research center that they created was really based in and around the New England area. So in that center, in the basement of it, they actually created an occult museum, which held a lot of different horrifying or scary things. Some people would say that there's like satanic things in there, others would say demonic artifacts, and overall just some really scary things are held in their occult museum.
In probably one of the most haunted places in the world because of the things that are in here. Everything in here has been taken from some place where people are either killed or maimed or so many ways. So it's tragic for me, you know, to even go in. People are very, very interested in the museum, and there's some people that are afraid to even go in. Everything and anything in here we have investigated. Don't ever touch anything. And if you do, let me know, which is prayers are said all the time, you know, to pray.
You have a priest to bless?
Yes, yes, definitely. Definitely.
But the primary purpose of that center was really to be the base of operations for Ed and Lorraine's different research and paranormal investigation. Today, Lorraine still runs the Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut with the help of her son-in-law. As for the Wynn, you could say that their paranormal partnership kind of began when they got married in 1952. And even though Ed died in 2006, Lorraine has said that he very much encouraged her to continue their work, keep investigating, and stay in the paranormal world. So you could say that the Warren legacy is still going on, considering Lorraine is still doing different paranormal work. So for the what of this topic, I'd really like to go over some of their very famous cases. I obviously cannot go over all 10,000 cases. I don't have that type of time, and I don't think you guys have that type of patience. But I really wanted to share some of their top cases that kind of make them the paranormal researchers that everyone talks about today. So we have the Perron family haunting, and this specific haunting actually inspired the first Conjuring movie. So the Perron case took place in their home in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Now the Perron family lived in this home from 1970 to 1980. So about 10 years they lived in this home. And throughout that time, the Warrens visited them on several different occasions. Now, the Perrons reported a lot of different things within their home. Hearing voices, furniture moving on their own, seeing or feeling spirits around them, and even smelling rotting flesh. Ew. For this specific case, a lot of people blame a previous owner of the house, and this idea actually came from the Warrens directly. So they blame Bathsheba Thayer, who had owned the house with her family in like the 1730s. Now there's a bunch of mixed knowledge or history or documentation on this woman. Honestly, people don't know a lot about her, but the rumors are that she was an evil witch, that she cursed the land, and perhaps this is why they were having so many problems in the house. There were even talks that Bathsheba had killed her own children. Lorraine claims to have felt a very evil presence within that specific house, even potentially demonic. So when they had heard about kind of the backstory of the house or the potential of Bathsheba being connected to this, the Warrens suggested that maybe she was to blame for the hauntings or the harm that was being inflicted on the Perron family. Now, Lorraine Warren was even a consultant on the Conjuring movie, and even the Perron family was involved in that movie process to tell their story. The oldest daughter in that family, Andrea Perron, has actually written books about her experience in that specific house growing up and what her and her sisters have witnessed. So everyone was kind of very much on board for the creation of the Conjuring movie.
I was on the set, you know, and I didn't really have any corrections or changes. I don't remember even him ask. No, I think
that in a big part is due to the writers.
Then we have a very big case or house. That is the Amityville Horror House. So there have been so many movies made about this house, so many different documentaries. It's huge. So the story by itself was already pretty big, and then when Ed and Lorraine Warren got involved, it kind of grew and got even bigger. So it's kind of its whole own thing. If you want to know more about the Amityville house, I have a full video dedicated to it that I will link below for you guys. But the basic gist of it is, in 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. brutally murdered 6 of his family members in that home. About a year later, the Lutz family moved in, and they started to report strange occurrences. They would hear things, hear voices. There would be flies throughout their house. They would smell weird things. There was levitation. There was injury. There was all these crazy things happening to the Lutz family. So in turn, after not that long in the house, the Lutz family fled and didn't return. So about 20 days after the Lutz family fled the home, Ed and Lorraine Warren went in to do an investigation, or perhaps even a cleanse of the house, just to kind of get a feel of what they thought was occurring in this house, since the Lutz family was very openly talking about how they thought there was something wrong, haunted, demons, something was going on with this house. So for this kind of night sleepover that the Warrens did in this home, they actually brought a local TV crew. And so this skyrocketed them even more. The Amityville Horror House was already extremely popular. And so then they're doing this broadcast of these ghost hunters investigating the home. And it was kind of like the original Ghost Adventures, you could say, for nowadays TV. During their night investigation into the home, they do claim to have captured an image of a boy in the stairway with glowing eyes. And in turn, Ed and Lorraine Warren claim that there is cursed property, the land is evil, there's a lot of different things wrong with the house and the land that it sits on. So Lorraine Warren has commented on this house several times, and none of them are ever good comments. It was absolutely horrible. It followed us right straight across the country. I will never go in Amityville house ever again. Lorraine Warren. We also have the Annabelle doll, which has also been made so famous from the movies. But the real-life version is quite different from the Hollywood version of the Annabelle doll. It's actually a Raggedy Ann doll that was picked up at an antique shop. So the story of Annabelle goes that a nurse in the 70s was given this doll as a gift, and she placed it in her room as kind of like decor. But then some weird things started happening. Her and her roommate would hear things, hear voices, weird scratching, and then the doll would kind of move on its own. Okay, that's terrifying, okay? They would find the doll in different places. The doll would like kind of be looking at them or looking this way. Her legs would uncross. There was just a lot of weird things that was happening with the doll. Eventually, they started finding messages that they believed were written from the doll on scratches of paper throughout their house. Some of them said, "Help us," or "Help me." And it all kind of came to a breaking point when they had a friend sleeping over, and he awoke and he couldn't breathe. He felt like something was choking him. He looked over and the Annabelle doll was staring at him. And then he looked and he had scratches on his neck. So at that point, they went ahead and called a medium. Now, this is where the story kind of gets a little, This medium claimed that there was a spirit of a little girl attached to this doll, that her name was Annabelle Higgins, and that she was just looking for comfort. She was a lost soul, and that's the only reason that she was attached to the doll, okay? Time would tell that might not be the case. As time went on, things got weirder and weirder, and they started to believe that maybe this wasn't just the innocent spirit of a little girl, that perhaps it was something much darker. Ed and Lorraine heard about the Annabelle doll and actually contacted the owner of this doll and were interested to see what was actually happening with Annabelle. The Warrens almost came to an immediate conclusion that the doll was not possessed at all. Instead, it was being manipulated by an inhuman spirit. So there was some evil shit going on with this Annabelle doll, according to the Warrens. When they finished their investigation, they felt the need to have a priest come in and perform an exorcism on the apartment to make sure that it was still safe for them to live and stay in, and kind of like a cleansing, if you will. The nurse that owned that doll pretty much gave it to the Warrens and said, "You can take it." And they did. They took it home with them, and they ended up including it in their occult museum, locked in a blessed case, where it actually still remains today. But Annabelle's story doesn't really stop there. There's been some other creepy occurrences while she's been in the Warrens' care. There's one specific story where a Catholic exorcist came to talk to the Warrens, and he was kind of challenging or making fun of Annabelle, saying that she wouldn't hurt anyone. And then on his way home, he actually lost control of his car. The brakes went out, and he was almost in a horrific car crash. He called the Warrens after this, and everyone kind of believed that this was Annabelle's doing. There's also another case where I guess it was probably like a tour of the occult museum, and this young man and his girlfriend were kind of making fun of Annabelle, and he proceeded to walk up to the case and pound against it, demanding that Annabelle scratch him to prove that she was real. In turn, they left the museum. They were asked to leave, and on their way home, the man lost control of his motorcycle, slammed into a tree, and died. And his girlfriend was in the hospital for like a year. So everyone claimed that this was also Annabelle's doing because they were kind of mocking her power, if you will.
This is the worst thing in here, is that doll. I'm not gonna stare at it though. So you can take the picture, but I'm not going to stare at it because that has done bad harm on a lot of people. You have to conjure the spirits in order to get them. You know, you're not going to get them by just walking around here.
And that's the one that's sort of depicted a little bit in this movie, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's the Annabelle doll.
The Warrens were also involved in the case that kind of inspired the movie A Haunting in Connecticut, which I actually wasn't aware of until I started looking into the Warrens' cases. So this case was basically about a family that had moved into a new house that had previously been a funeral home. Now, they had moved so that their son would be closer for his cancer treatment. And as weird things started happening, the Warrens got involved. And basically, they determined that when it was a funeral home, some of the morticians had been doing weird rituals or weird stuff with the bodies, if you catch my drift, and the spirits were angry, and that's why these occurrences were happening in this home. The Warrens were even called into the trial of Arnie Cheyenne Johnson. Now, this was the first known case in the United States to plea not guilty because the devil made me do it. His defense was that it wasn't his fault because he was possessed at the time. It was suggested that he was possessed after attending an exorcism of his fiance's brother, and that after seeing and witnessing that, that's when his possession began, so he didn't have control of his actions because he was possessed by a demon when he murdered his landlord. Johnson's defense did not actually hold up in court, though. He was found guilty of first-degree manslaughter and ended up serving 5 years of actually a much longer sentence. This specific case was also made into a movie. And there are so many other cases for the Warrens. Like I said, the Warrens claim to have investigated 10,000 paranormal incidents. That's a lot. But those are some of the ones that are really famous for the Warrens. They're really famous today because Hollywood has kind of made them famous. So why? Why are they so popular? Well, in the paranormal world, Ed and Lorraine Warren have always been pretty popular, pretty famous. But more recently, as I said, Hollywood has skyrocketed them with the Conjuring series. The Conjuring series started in 2013, and it was the first movie in a long line of Conjuring movies. It's pretty much started its own whole little world. There's been the Conjuring movie, Conjuring 2. There's been Annabelle, several Annabelle movies. Now we have The Nun. All of them are connected to Ed and Lorraine Warren's cases. And then you have side shot movies like the different Amityville movies, Haunting in Connecticut movie. There's just so many different references for Ed and Lorraine Warren's cases within Hollywood, and that really makes it popular today. So, claiming to have worked on over 10,000 cases, that gives Hollywood directors, writers, producers a lot of material. And it makes for really good ghost stories. I mean, I love those movies. They're super creepy. So, those cases, those movies really put Ed and Lorraine Warren back in the spotlight for today's generation. So how about how? How are the Warrens perceived today? So with most supernatural or paranormal things, you're going to have two sides, or maybe, 3 levels of this, right? You have the total believers that believe Ed and Lorraine Warren because they believe in ghosts and demons. Over here, you have the skeptics that do not believe in ghosts. And then you have people in the middle that maybe they believe in ghosts, but maybe they don't believe in everything.
People say, this guy's going back into the medieval ages. There are no such things as devils or demons. Yes, there are.
As time has gone on, a lot of people have suggested that Ed and Lorraine Warren were frauds, that they did nothing with the paranormal, that it was basically all a scam to make money. And you really have to go back and forth when looking or believing the Warrens. Are you a believer? So does that mean you immediately believe the Warrens? Or if you're a total skeptic and you don't believe in ghosts, then of course you're not going to believe any of their cases. And if you're somewhere in the middle, maybe you believe in ghosts or the supernatural, but maybe there's something off about some of the Warrens' cases or some of their investigations. So the Warrens did not technically charge any of these people to do a paranormal investigation. So keep that in mind. But at the same time, look at book sales, interviews, the movies now. They kind of made a lot of money off of these stories. So that's the question. Were they in it for the money to get the book sales, to do the interviews, to do all of this paranormal stuff and make a name for themselves? Or were they really helping people with paranormal problems, and in exchange they just decided to share these terrifying stories with the world? It's very interesting. The Perron family, for instance, the one that inspired the Conjuring movie, they to this day claim that all the occurrences in the house were very real and that some of the scenes in the movie were very real to them, and Lorraine Warren claims that all that was true. However, the owner of the house currently says that it's all bullshit. She doesn't believe that the house is haunted, so that's kind of like back and forth story on if that specific case was true. Amityville is a huge one as well, okay? Amityville is one of the most talked about paranormal locations in the United States, but it is also the most debated, and skeptics love to tear it apart. And I understand why. A lot of people believe that the Lutz family story was made up. It wasn't real, it was made up for money. There's even reports that DeFeo's lawyer, DeFeo being the guy that murdered his family in the house, that the lawyer and the Lutz family actually got together and put this plan in place. It would help the case in the long run. The Lutz family could get money after, selling books or doing interviews about this haunted house they lived in. And so people say that it was all just fake. So then where do the Warrens come in? They did that night investigation in the house and brought the TV crew along. Some people fault them for that, bringing a TV crew along when you're doing such a delicate paranormal investigation, which I could understand that point. So were the Warrens legit and trying to find out what was wrong with the Amityville house? Or were they in on the fake story? Were they brought in to further tell the scary ghost story and make this house creepier and creepier? As I said, Lorraine Warren still claims to this day that she hates the Amityville house. She has no interest in ever going again. And the same is for some of the Lutz children. They say it was some of the worst time in their life, and they have no interest to ever go back to that house because of their terrifying experience. So, who do you believe? Is it fake? Is it real? Did it happen? Who knows? Another interesting case for the Warrens is the case that actually inspired The Conjuring 2. It was called the Enfield Poltergeist over in England. So it's very interesting that they chose this specific case for the second Conjuring movie, because according to real life people that were really there, they claim that the Warrens really had nothing to do with that case. In the movie, you'd think that they were front and center in this case, in this investigation, but various people say that that was not the case whatsoever. That during that paranormal investigation of that family and that specific poltergeist home, the Warrens arrived uninvited. They stayed for 1 day and weren't really a part of the investigation. Instead, they were just there kind of looking around, kind of seeing what was up. And in some cases, people reported that Ed Warren was talking about, the book sales or how that they could make money off of this case if these investigators hooked up with the Warrens, if you will. There's some other weird things with the Enfield Poltergeist as well. A lot of people think that it was just the children playing a prank because it was after Amityville. So some people suggest that they got the inspiration from that to make up this ghost story, that the children being attacked and things like that. So that's, once again, do you believe? Are you a skeptic? To where the Warrens kind of fit in to both sides. So Annabelle is also very debated in the paranormal community, and that's mostly because the story of Annabelle, the doll, comes from the Warrens. And there's not really other places to fact check this. The story comes from the Warrens. It's a big deal. Obviously, they still have the doll in the occult museum. It's kind of like an attraction these days. People go to the museum just to take a picture with the Annabelle doll. No thank you, even if it's fake. No. Not interested. But people just debate how real it is, or if this was just another story that the Warrens made up. There are also some sources, and I find this very interesting, that suggest that the Annabelle story is very similar to an episode of The Twilight Zone, where the story of the Annabelle doll is super similar to a storyline on that specific show. So that's interesting if they would have pulled that from a TV show. When you're looking at paranormal or supernatural things, video and photo evidence is always going to be up for interpretation. Once again, you're going to have the believer side, the skeptic side, and somewhere in the middle. And that's no different for Ed and Lorraine Warren. Some of the things that they've investigated, people believe, others think that they're totally fake. The photo of the boy from Amityville, a lot of people don't classify that as evidence that Amityville is haunted because it could easily be anyone, and there's no other video or photo reference to that boy, just that one shot of him in the stairway. So I mean, it's really up for interpretation. Do you believe what they did, their work they did for decades within the paranormal world? Or do you think that they were just total fake people through all of their career that were just looking to sell books, to do interviews, to do all these things? It's really up to your interpretation. I can't tell you which is right. Me personally, I do like to believe in ghosts or the supernatural, the paranormal, but I also consider myself a skeptic. Just because I like to believe in those paranormal things doesn't mean I'm going to believe every ghost story, doesn't mean I'm going to believe every photo or video. These days, things can be edited so easily, and I also don't believe every single ghost hunter show on TV. No. So it's questionable. Were Ed and Lorraine Warren before their time? Did they kind of get ahead of the paranormal fake research shows that we see so much today on TV? Or were they legit doing paranormal research and ghost investigations? Were they actually communicating with, like, the spirit world?
There are spirits that can do great physical harm to people.
As I said, the movies really brought the Warrens back to life, you could say. They are super in the spotlight. I'm sure they're going to make more Conjuring movies. There's probably going to be some more different cases they're covering. And of course, that's up to Hollywood's interpretation. You can't really blame the Warrens for that, because Hollywood's going to take a true life story and make it into a completely different script if they want to make a good, scary movie, because that's how Hollywood works. So I would love to hear what you guys think about the Warrens. Do you believe that they were doing real paranormal work for all of those years? Or do you think that it was a scam? Do you believe that Lorraine Warren is clairvoyant or has some connection to the paranormal world? What do you guys think about the Warrens? When I see interviews with Lorraine Warren, something about her makes me want to believe, I guess you could say. I don't know, there's just like something about her. But there are certain aspects to their cases that really make me question what was real and what was made up. Thanks so much for watching, lovelies. I hope you enjoyed this episode of our bizarre and unusual world, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
It's not easy. It's not easy, you know. You know, you see things and experience things. It's more comfortable now. It's a lot more comfortable for me.